Good morning, everyone. 1 minute past 10. How are you all? Thanks for joining. My name's Matt, and I'm the MD at BIMA. I get the really easy bit today. I just get to say hello, welcome, and introduce the people that have done all the work. This is a BIMA Masterclass. If you haven't joined these before, well, BIMA, we're a million things to a million people, right? But we try and use this lovely eclectic mix of people and skills and companies we've got in the community. And every month, somebody within the community runs a masterclass for everybody else. And that's what we're doing today. There are always different subjects coming up. We've got a lot on AI at the moment, you wouldn't guess. But I mean, somebody mentioned recently we're doing a lot on AI. Well, of course we're doing a lot on AI. It's like it's a big subject. It's not just one tiny thing, is it? We'll run a training session on Gen AI tools for the creative departments. We've got a session coming up soon on how agencies are pricing it for their clients. So it's a huge theme. So this is just one part of it. I'm going to introduce you to Sam and Gabby in a sec. But there are some things coming up that I wanted to let you all know about. So we have an AI peer network that runs just about every month, and that's next week. And it's run by a guy called Ray, and it's drop in and drop out, and you can just talk about different things AI related. That particular one, we have a speaker. That's the one where I mentioned where it's talking about pricing AI. So if you're especially working in an agency and you're experimenting on how to use different pricing models when it comes to AI, especially around the Gen AI tools, you're not going to do it by time, right? Join that 23rd of October. On the 7th of November, there's a CX peer network that takes place in person. It's in London, and that's going to be about how to make AI experiences human. And our AI Council are running a collab session at the end of November. I'm going to come off the screen in a minute, but I'll add links to those events in the chat. So housekeeping wise, it's a webinar format. So you get to sit back, relax, put your feet up, drink your coffee because we can't see you, but we do want you to engage as much as you can. So please do that through the Q&A or the chat functionality that you'll find in the Zoom screen. And I'm sure Sam and Gabby will get around to it at some point. That's it. I said I get the easy bit. So Sam and Gabby, thank you so much for putting this together. I know you've done this specifically for today, so we really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. Shall I just hand over to you both? I know you've got some slides, and let you take it from here.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks very much, Matt. Can you see the slide at the moment, or do we need to turn that?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Let's see. Screen 2. Can you see that now?
Oh, okay. I can see your screen now. Yeah. So
yeah. Great.
Hopefully, could someone pop in the chat? Yes.
Yeah, we got some comments. Thank you, everyone.
Good.
So thank you very much for the lovely introduction. You can go and sit and have your coffee as well now, and hopefully enjoy it. I think you talked to an important point there. There's a lot going on in the world of AI at the moment. It is the sort of current hype is relatively new, and how it's being used, especially in marketing and customer experience, is new for all of us and for all the brands out there as well. So today, what our aim is to talk to you about how you can leverage AI to understand, connect, and serve your audience. And what we really want is just to leave you with some principles and hopefully some practical things you can take away that will help you move forward on that journey. As Matt said, if you want to ask questions along the way, please drop them in the chat. We'll put them in there and leave them in there until the end, and we'll circle back round on them. We've also got a little exercise that you hopefully can participate in as we go along today. And please do just like shout out hello and stuff like that in the chat, because it is nice to know there's people there and that you're listening along the way. So I'll start with a little bit of an introduction to myself. My name is Sam Page, as Matt said. I am the CEO and co-founder of 7dots. 7dots is a digital innovation agency. We work with brands to create amazing digital experiences that bring them closer to their customers. So what we're looking to do is enhance all those touch points that a brand has with a customer in the digital world and make them as brilliant as possible. And of course, in that future world, AI is going to play a role in that more and more. My story, I'm not going to bore everyone for half an hour of my story, but just to touch on it very briefly, to give you some context as to why I'm here, is that I used to really struggle at school, going back when I was in school. I was dyslexic. Reading and writing just never made sense to me. And then as I was sort of growing up and becoming a teenager, technology became more mainstream. My dad brought home a computer one day, and really the rest is history. I suddenly found that through technology, I could bring my ideas and passions to life, and I could sort of navigate a school system that just wasn't designed for me. So I'm incredibly passionate about technology and technology for good. I think it should be there to help people, not do anything else. That's the primary purpose of it. But I also believe in the importance of brands to amplify that and to help it reach more people. So that really gives you an idea of why I started a digital innovation agency, because of that idea of using innovation in technology to help brands reach more people and have a positive impact in the world. Alongside that, I'm also a non-exec for a number of businesses which are in the technology or sustainability or neurodiversity space. I'm a trustee at a charity, and I have a number of joint ventures, one of which we'll touch on a bit later to bring to life some of the work we're doing with AI. Gabby, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm Gabby. I'm the Senior Digital Strategist here at Seven Dots. And my background is actually from both sides. So I've been in the agency side for many years, moved to client side for many years, and now back in agency side, working incredible projects and very innovative digital projects with Sam and the team. My previous roles actually before coming here, being on the client side, was leading the digital strategy strategy at Unilever here in London, and also leading the digital strategy at Pernod Ricard in Paris. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because I've seen things from both sides. I have different perspectives, and I think the interesting here for us as we go through the examples and the topic is I've been the side and being the client and going to the agency saying, we need to include AI no matter what. We need to have something. We need to have AI in the agenda because the board is pressuring us. I don't know how we're going to do it. And that's a very unfair question to agencies because there's no reason for us really to use technology for the sake of using it, to Sam's point. So we really need to be mindful and making sure we are helping customers' lives through the technology and using that to benefit our consumers. So I think that's why I'm also passionate about this, passionate about understanding customer journeys and experiences, and really using that knowledge and what is out there nowadays to impact people's lives. So that's me. Which is a good segue to what we're going to talk about, because really I think what we want to think about before everything else is that it doesn't really matter what we think about AI, it's about what your customers think, which is what I was saying already. It's very easy for us within the industry to just go into the project, into the solution, and trying to like fit the solution into the problems that we're seeing with our clients. But we forget to see ourselves as the customer. Because at the end of the day, we are also customers, even though we are in the industry, we are the customers experiencing digital innovation, digital experiences in our day-to-day lives, but we don't think as much as we should maybe like this in our day-to-day life. So here the challenge is, how can we see ourselves as customers, not wearing our agency hat as we normally do? And so I think should I?
Yeah.
But I think, yes, that's a good way of starting this as a thinking for us. But just there is very compelling evidence out there showing, of course, the brands, customers are expecting AI including AI into their day-to-day lives. So here is a stat saying that 78% of consumers believe Gen AI is the future. So they understand that, like, yes, I can see it. People are using ChatGPT. They're seeing the application of Gen AI in different touch points, or even from brands. But it's interesting to see that only 39% of them are excited about the future. So there is also that fear and that tension around the subject. So us being the ones building those experiences and trying to serve our customers, we kind of need to be mindful of that. Here, another stat showing that 78% of consumers also want brands to be transparent when they are using AI. So this is a subject, of course, all of us are hearing across the board. They worry about the data. So how the brands are being mindful and transparent in terms of the use of consumers' data to unlock personalization, for example, to unlock the potential of AI. So yes, that is a real worry out there, and we as agencies are the ones building experience that to serve again our customers. We need to be mindful of that and address that in the best way possible.
And I think there's a really interesting point here that, you know, as per the previous stat, yes, people see where the world's going, but they're not sure they're excited about it. They're probably quite fearful, as we all are at times. And then what that really shows is, therefore, they need everyone to index upon this point.
Yeah.
They need to remove some of that fear and understand what's going on. So,
and I think it is a question mark for brands as well to answer what does that mean? What does it mean to be transparent?
Yeah.
In an experience, in a digital experience. So what is the right way to say that to our customers? So there is also nuances there that I feel like we need to be thinking about.
Agreed.
So I guess this is leading to the task we want to give you all, even to ourselves today, which is that remove our professional hats and become a customer again, a consumer again. So this is really for us I know it's difficult, and I think back to the point about being excited, it's very easy for us being in the industry and feeling excited about AI, about technology, because this is our day-to-day lives. But we need to remember, customers, like even if you ask our family, friends who are not in the industry, that's when we start hearing, oh, they're not as excited as we are. So it's good for us trying to remove that excitement just because we do this as a living, and see us as a consumer. And that's what the task we want to give you here today. Think and feel as consumers. And to help us do that, we would love you to answer those two questions. So we're going to go back to this at the end of the session today. So if you can now, or even like throughout the session, when you have ideas, just let us know. What is a recent digital experience you loved or hated? So if there's nothing coming in your mind like that you loved, maybe there is something coming up that you go like, oh, I actually didn't like that one. So just let us know the name of the brand and the reason why that experience came in your mind. So what made it stand out to you? So just put it there, and we're going to go back to that to the end.
Yeah, and the more brilliant or the more terrible, the better.
Yeah.
There's more ammunition to talk about. So maybe something we'll talk about was encourage some thoughts and ideas as we go along, even if nothing springs to mind right now. The one thing we just wanted to do next was just touch on the real basics behind AI, because there is so much noise out there and so much hype, and there's so much different in understanding, from some people having no idea what's going on, some people being very, very technical. So I just want to do a bit of a reset slide here, really, and talk about AI basics. So the first thing to bear in mind is that actually AI in some form has been around for quite a while now. So machine learning was where it really started. And that was the idea of taking information and data and really being able to try and look at patterns or predict things from that. That was around in the 1980s, 1990s, and continues to be a fundamental part of AI to this day. So it has actually been around for a while. What happened in the noughties and 20s, as people say, is this idea of transformers and deep learning. So suddenly transformers allowed machines to read things like natural language and put more prominence on certain words. And it suddenly meant that as we've come to the recent day and age, generative AI has become much more capable. We've got large scale generative models, which are using deep learning from vast sets of data, but being able to use these transformers to understand that data and apply context to it and actually create things from it. That's the generative bit. The fact it can generate content, information, etc., from that set of data. So actually, the vast amount of hype that's been around in the last couple of years has been around this generative AI. It's just because it's been labeled AI rather than machine learning, it suddenly feels like something very new. But as I say, machine learning is still part of AI. It's still part of what needs to be used to activate generative AI and to do it well. So it's just an important reset point here. I think because of the hype around generative AI, and don't get me wrong, things like ChatGPT are amazing and they deserve that hype, understandably, it's become much more prominent in the lives, professional lives that we operate. So another stat here, 73% of CMOs are already using generative AI tools in this survey that was done in 2024. Now, I do think there's a question there in terms of what are generative AI tools, because actually in our experience across most of the market, this is actually internal tools for efficiency, operation, basic ideation. It's not actually, for the most part, tools that are really offering something to the customers, like we talked about earlier. There are starting to be signs of that, and what we're going to talk to you about today is how you can do that and some brands that have done it well. I think the stats a lot higher than it would be if we said, well, how many of your businesses are using AI to actually help customers? It's probably going to come down quite a lot. So interesting point of view there. And I think what really reflects that as a stat is 97% of CMOs have specific concerns about using AI. The point is they're not really sure how to use it. How can they use it effectively? How can they use it externally to help their audiences and customers? And even if they are using it internally, are they using it in an ethical way or responsible way that's actually going to deliver value at the end of the day? So there's a big sort of world of chaos out there at the moment. Everyone's trying to use it. Everyone's not really sure or a bit concerned about it. And hopefully we're going to address some of that today. I think the thing we wanted to do to just sort of bring the challenge to life is use a past example and sort of it becomes an analogy for today. So the point being, if you get this wrong, it really can be a way to kill a brand and an organization. We don't want to put the fear of God in people. Today is about the opposite of that. But if we look at a company like Blockbuster, a company that most people here will probably be familiar with, they didn't embrace technology in the right way. I mean, in fact, when Netflix went begging on their door and said, please buy us for 50 million because we're struggling with cash at the moment and we've got all of these ambitions around what we want to do with technology, they laughed them out of the room, as the story goes. The CEO laughed them out of the room. Fast forward to now, well, not only do Blockbuster no longer exist, but Netflix are worth about 305 billion. So there's this point here, there's this analogy, if you don't embrace emerging technology, act in a disruptive way and use technology in a disruptive way with your customers, you're going to get left behind. And that's the same with AI. But you need to do it in a way that is going to deliver value. And that just takes us nicely back to this point. AI is here as a tool to serve your most valuable asset. In our view, that's your customer. That's where we always start. You don't exist as a brand or a company if you're not serving your most valuable asset, your customer. And this is where most people start by going wrong. They think about, well, what can AI do for us? We've just got to use it. It's technology. That's not the place to start. The place to start is how can it help our customers? And we're going to come on to that a bit more with the model we use when we're talking to brands about this. The thing I want to preface that with is, at the end of the day, when you break it all down, it comes to input, which leads to output. And if you don't get the input right, or the input's not as good as it can be, the output's not going to be great as a result. And I think this comes to this point of all these CMOs are a bit concerned at the moment. They know they're not necessarily putting the right stuff in to get the right output, and they're terrified about what that means. And that's understandable. And here's just 3 examples of where it can go a bit wrong. And we're going to take you to actual real life examples, which are fairly recent. So first of all, hallucinations. This is one that probably everyone's going to be most familiar with. We know that the large language models that are trained on this vast open source data are very, very liable to sort of hallucinate. They make stuff up they don't know. They also don't have specific data which is relevant to a brand or the person they're talking to when we're looking at that external world. So hallucinations are a big problem. Structured data and first-party data is also a big problem. So this is an input. If you don't get this right, if you do not structure your company's data in a way that the AI can use it effectively, or you don't give it first-party data, you haven't got a good chance of getting an output that's going to be right for the customer or the consumer at the end of the day. And last but not least is prompting or machine learning engineering, or the bit that sits between the input and the output. If you don't do this bit properly, you're not going to get the output you want. And again, you're going to end up with an experience which isn't right. And we've just got a couple of examples here of where it's gone wrong. And then an example which is brand new and we think is really interesting to think about where it could go wrong or right. And we'll see what people think about that. But the first one's Air Canada. This was a case that went to court actually this year. It's very, very recent. A customer was interacting with a artificial intelligence chatbot on their website. It had been trained on the company's data, but perhaps not in a fully structured manner. And the customer was asking the chatbot about a refund for a bereavement flight. So Air Canada openly talk about the fact if you're booking a flight and it's for a bereavement trip, they will give you a discount. This customer was asking about the fact they'd already done the flight and could they get the discount or refund effectively. And the chatbot said, yes, of course you can. Here's a link to our full policies, which of course the customer didn't click and read. And it turned out they don't offer a refund for bereavement flights when the flight was in the past. Now, they did offer a voucher to the customer, but the customer said that's not subsequent, that's not enough compensation, took them to court, and the court ruled that even though Air Canada argued that effectively the chatbot is an agent, which is out of their control, just like one of their customer experience agents, they were therefore not liable for this. The court ruled, well, you've put the chatbot on your website and you've trained it with your data, you are liable for this. And at the end of the day, the customer got a small compensation amount that covered the flight and so on. So an example where input wasn't great, output wasn't great, it's not only led to a poorer customer experience and damaged brand reputation, it's actually been really inefficient for them as a company because they've had to fix that issue and look into it and so on. So interesting example. Another one, McDonald's, everyone's favorite fast food brand. They decided they start using voice recognition and generative AI as part of the drive-through experience. Customers could rock up, order that they wanted. It would be super efficient, a lovely experience for the customer, really engaging, and they drive away with their food. What actually happened was because they sort of rushed into this, in my view, the model that they trained, the data they trained it with, the parameters they'd set for what is normal behavior and what isn't just weren't working. And there's loads of stories, and people have probably seen the TikTok videos where customers were getting 260 chicken McNuggets added to their basket and they couldn't get them removed and they're just sort of getting stuck. And there's hilarious reels of people's friends screaming with laughter in the background. So again, a really good example of a bad experience where the customers were frustrated and couldn't even order the food they wanted. The queue for the drive-through got huge and added loads of operational overhead. And surprise, surprise, McDonald's have now said they are parking that experiment, not because it didn't work,
Okay.
but because they think there's a wider opportunity in the future. So an interesting point of view when we start thinking about input output and how this could be wrong. Gabby.
Let's talk about new technology. So, because those things are happening pretty much every single day, we're seeing new things coming up. And this is a new tool that people will start using more and more, especially brands. And this is a good example for us to see the difference when we are using the technology meaningfully and thinking about the problem we are solving with the technology, not only about using the technology. So there is even a comment in the chat about it. One of the examples was using Google Notebook, which is great because it is a brilliant tool. So basically it's a tool that will help turn complex information into a conversation between two people. And it sounds like a podcast. I don't know if you've tried before. One of the people here today tried, and it's incredible. Like even the comment is, we're trying to get across and how credible the conversation was. It is impressive. So that gives us a sense of, okay, we can go and try this with our clients or use for anything. But when we think about the customer at the end of that, receiving that content, we need to understand what is the problem you're solving with that. So one of examples, when we differentiate entertainment versus learning. So if you use this tool, for example, for a B2B client, whereas they have a lot of white paper content, whereas people in the industry, so lawyers or in the insurance industry, where they need to be reading those documents in order to just learn new things and get better in their professions, they will just find that tool, that mechanism easier for them to consume that content. So that for them, they wouldn't care much. That's a fabricated conversation. They would just say like, yeah, fine, it made my life easier because it made me consume a complex information in an easier format. Whereas in an entertainment, if you want to but if you, as a consumer, remember the exercise we're doing here today, if as a consumer, you want to see two personalities that you know, and you are interested to see to hear the conversation between them, that tool will not be feasible in that context. So we just need to be mindful how we're using it, because sometimes the tool is powerful. There's nothing wrong with that, but when you use the tool in a different context, that will not go well. So you don't want that to end up being like your favorite podcast, just being a fabricated conversation between two robots, which it sounds like what the future will look like. But I think it's our job to avoid that and be very mindful to the context that we're using the technology.
So that leads us on to the model that we use when we're talking to brands about this, and how we break this down into how to start thinking about doing it properly and getting the most out of AI for your customers, for the consumers that are out there, and how you can really add value. So it's 3 parts. It's very simple. It starts and is all about understanding. You need to really understand your customer and what they're looking for, what the problem might be they're facing, what the opportunity might be, but it's all about understanding. And that comes from data. You need the data in some form, and using AI to understand that data and help you get more understanding from it. We're going to come on to some practical examples a bit later on in terms of how you can do that. But you've got to start with that understanding bit, because that is going to be your input and lead to your output. And if you don't have that, you're not going to get very far. The next part of the process is how you use that understanding to connect to the human at the end of the experience. And I think it's so easy to forget in all of this that at the end of every digital experience, at this moment in time, the way we're looking at this is a consumer or a person or a human being who wants to get something out of this exchange. And you need to connect with them. You need to connect with them on a level that is as close to human as possible, and it really resonates with them. And once you've got that connection, the third part is how do you serve them? How do you add value to your life? How can AI help you to add value to that customer's life to have a positive impact? And that links all the way back to the understanding piece, because if you don't have the understanding in the first place, you're never going to connect with them effectively, and you're never going to create something that serves them and adds value to their life. So this is how we look at a problem like this. We've got a few examples of brands out in the world that are doing that. We're working on this with lots of brands, but the projects are heavily under NDA. So we wanted to use some public examples that are already out there that brands have been doing that we think work really well. We've also got some tools as an agency that we've built that help us do this, which we can share with you today. So we're going to run through those. So most of you hopefully will have heard of these examples, or at least some of them. But what we're going to do is break it down into this 3-part model so you can see how understanding led to connection and serving. The first one is Spotify and the AI DJ that launched earlier in the year or the end of last year. I can't quite remember now. I mean, this is a brilliant experience that got so much coverage from both consumers and the press alike in terms of how brilliant it was. Now, why was it brilliant? Well, the first thing it does is it uses deep learning to really understand an individual, and also the trends that are going on in the wider ecosystem. So it looks at the person, it looks at their preferences, it looks at what they do, and it uses that understanding to be able to recommend things to them based on what is trending and where everything is going. So there's a lot of machine learning going on in there. There's a lot of consumption of large amounts of data as well, which is helping build all of that. It then connects with them deeply through a DJ that talks to them and resonates to them in a way that feels pretty close to a real DJ. I mean, better than me if I'm DJing, let's put it that way. So, you get this wonderful commentary, which talks, and, there's lovely things in there around, well, it was back in the 20s when you were listening to this music, and we're just going to bring that back to tonight for some nostalgia. It feels so personal to you.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And as a result, you're just heavily engaged in it. But the real beauty is the fact that it does add value as well. It's not a gimmick. So if all it did was that as in the gimmick, it wouldn't help. But what it actually does is creates playlists that you want to listen to in a moment when you want to listen to them. And it also helps you discover new music as well.
Yeah.
So it's really useful, because actually where we all were before at times was very stuck in our own echo chamber in terms of we're listening to the same things because it's the same things we know. But it actually helps you break out of that a bit and remember old things that you might have forgotten about. And even building on that even more is it has the ability for you to feedback and for it to get better and better and better. which is something that's, just a great opportunity for brands.
I don't even listen to my playlists anymore.
Yeah.
I'm only listening to the ones Spotify is giving me, which is great.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm a massive fan of 80s music, so it struggles to find new 80s music for me, but it's a brilliant tool. Moving on, NatWest, a bit more of a functional example, but they have Marge, which is all about simplifying the home buying process. So in terms of understanding, they fed the AI with loads of information around regulations, process, product offerings, customer needs, really helping it to build up a big understanding of what a customer and customers generally are looking for. Also, that personalization around what an individual customer might be looking for based on what they've done or where they're at. It then connects with people in real time. So it's there to talk to them in a moment of need, when they really need them. It has that level of human connection that feels real, and it can also trigger human connection when it's appropriate, which I think is really important. No one wants to get stuck with AI and not be able to get out of it when they want to get out of it. And it kind of empowers the user. It's helping them learn, it's helping them make decisions, it's helping move them forward in this journey they're having the whole time with NatWest. In the past, that would have just been done generally online, and they just stumbled across 10 different brands. But suddenly NatWest is allowing that journey forward and that engagement and elevating their experience. And it serves them. It's saving them time. It's increasing the loyalty of NatWest. It's being adaptable all the way through. So the customer is getting value out here. They're getting a much better process. They're getting much more knowledgeable. It's really helping them. And it's done it in a way that's really connected them deeply to a brand. So another great example.
I think a good point for us to mention here is this is a good example that will only get better with the structure of as they go through this journey, they will keep learning more from the customers, adding back to the connection bit, and then serving them even better. So I think we need to understand, when we are building experience like this, how can we simplify as much as we can to have something there for customers and then learn from it. I think this is something that sometimes we just want to go and create something complex straight away, and then the foundation isn't there, exactly to the examples we showed at the beginning. So just having something simple there and just keep evolving from where that journey is now.
Yeah.
So this is something that AI helps us just to get better, right? With simple things like this.
Get the basics right first.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And then a relatively new one, the Museum of Zoology, University of Cambridge, has come up with this wonderful idea of bringing extinct and species to life through AI. So the idea is you can have a chat with a dodo and find out more about it, but in a way that would be true to that species and how it might interact with you. Now, you've got to use your imagination a bit, because the dodo would never talk to a human. But the point is, we now have the power to say, these are the traits of this animal. This is how it might have behaved and reacted to things. And actually, let's have a conversation with it. So when we think about children and learning, this is just such an engaging way to bring animals, species, history to life in a new way. Of course, it uses this model of, first of all, it has to understand that species really well. They really need to build a massive amount of data to help the model understand how that species would have acted, all the information about it that's available, everything that's out there. And that's going to be the foundation of this. Of course, the connection's there. It's allowing people to connect with history, in the case of a species that's extinct, and have an interaction with them. And I think I can't remember how many languages this is launched in, something like 30, I think. So it's multilingual, it works around the world. You don't need someone there translating everything all the time. And suddenly it's really connecting. And it's really an emotional experience, because actually to have a connection with an animal that's extinct and learn more about it feels emotional, it feels empowering, it feels great. So really nice connection. And then of course the serving's there. You're learning, it's building awareness, engagement. Hopefully it can help society generally. It's just a really nice example of someone thinking outside the box and going, well, from this understanding, let's connect with people and let's serve them. Let's help them understand more in a really engaging and beautiful way. So that's 3 fairly current examples of brands that we think are doing this well, or organizations that are doing this well. That's talking the talk. We're also, as an agency, embracing this and looking at how we can do it. I don't want this to feel like a sales pitch, so I'm going to keep it fairly high level. But these are just two tools that we've built. One of them is a joint venture, and one's an internal tool, just to trigger some thinking and hopefully inspire some other people. So the first one's a platform called Dealcraft. We actually launched this last year. And both of these platforms use the principle of understand, connect, and serve. Dealcraft is a sales enablement platform. It basically helps salespeople understand the solution they're offering to a target prospect using vast amounts of data, not only from large language, but also data it collects, and we feed into it in a structured manner. It helps the salesperson connect with the sales opportunity by giving them points of actual connection which it generates. Could be emails, for example, but also narrative to use, because sometimes in enterprise sales, of course, you need human-to-human connection to help move it along. But it also adds value. Not only does it add value to the salespeople, it's saving them time, it's arming them with all this information. It also adds value in thinking about what the solution is that they can add to a customer and the impact that can have. So it's adding value all round. As I said, we launched this last year. It's been kept fairly under the radar. We're having some incredible results so far. So a tool that we built using our own models, using our own prompt engineering, and using the way we structure the data to feed that process. Another tool is a tool that's called Meow. It's got a long technical name, but this is about understanding vast amounts of data. This is a tool we've built internally to enhance the services we offer. We're not offering it externally as a commercial service, and it allows us to look at websites and competitor websites and understand content that's being published and how people are responding to content, what content's driving people to those experiences. We use all of that analysis to create new content that allows us to connect and serve those people, ultimately helping brands to stand out in their category and to have competitive advantage over other people. So we wanted to just put this together in some practical examples for you for how you could consider today how you can understand, connect, and serve using artificial intelligence. And just the hope here is that you might take something away from this today that could inspire some thinking or be something that you learn about to help move your organization's AI offering or capabilities forward. So on an understand level, and we could spend all day talking about these, so we'll keep this super top level. In terms of understand, you've got things like AI-driven audience segmentation and psychographic profiling. So feeding an AI tool, whether it's built into one of your existing tools, if you've got a customer data platform, you might have one built in. If you don't, you can take data and feed it into a large language model that you set up yourself, or use an open one that's secure, obviously not personal data if it's an open one, and get it to start help you thinking about segmentation. How can we segment those audiences? How can we sub-segment? What can we learn about them? What can we look about the psychographic profiling of them? You've got things like synthetic research. So this idea of creating personas, which you then run use cases, test cases against to understand more. Actually, this is really, you can create a synthetic profile in something like ChatGPT and throw things at it. It's not that complicated to start doing this. There are also providers out there that are doing this at a much larger scale. And don't quote me on this, but I think they say they can do it at something like 90% accuracy, which is probably more accurate than mass surveys of people. So synthetic research is something really interesting to look into. And then, of course, using machine learning principles, predictive learning, including behavioral patterns. Can you feed behavioral patterns into a machine and ask it to start looking at prediction? Again, available in some platforms that are out there, or if not, you can engage a machine learning programmer and get them to help you with this. In terms of connect, well, personalization at scale, including storytelling, for me is absolutely key. Suddenly, AI allows you to connect with people in a personalized way that was just never possible in the past. So whether that's producing content, which is much more tailored and targeting, might be messaging, might be content, who knows, you can do that using the open models, large language models. You can build your own if you want to. You've also got automated customer service. Now, we've seen some examples where it's not been done brilliantly. You don't want to do that. But actually, when it is done brilliantly, it can really help. That can be brilliant. And I think the place to start here is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? There's some examples where customer service interactions are answering very specific questions. What's my baggage allowance on the flight, for example? AI should be brilliant at answering things like that when it's trained correctly with the structured data. When it's much more open-ended, larger questions at the moment, we know there's some variance there, and that's perhaps not where to start. Get the basics right first, build on it. And then, of course, real-time feedback. So if you're asking people for feedback, you're reading how they're reacting, you can start using that to evolve things. And then that really leads into serve. So I've put it on here. I know it's been around for ages, but product recommendations and product development are still things that not everyone's doing.
Yeah.
You know, Amazon, the masters of it, and a few other examples out there. But use the systems that are out there, and there's plenty off-the-shelf tools, or again, you can build your own that can
And
do.
there's some room to improve that.
Yeah.
I think we all know what recommendation system is, but we still, as consumers, how many brands we have that we're like, I wouldn't be interested on this. So I feel like that is just that there's so much room for improvement with AI.
Definitely. And then moving on, sort of proactive personal guidance, you know, AI that can help people make recommendations. We're going to come on to an example on this one in a minute, so I won't dwell on that too much, but also things like sustainability. You know, consumers are worried about the planet in the future. If we can use AI to turn machines off when they're not needed and on again when they are, we can suddenly start to have an impact. So we're just, again, thinking outside the box. And then ultimately where this will all go in terms of generative AI is rich content creation, immersive experiences, you know, films that are created on the fly or experiences that evolve as people use them to really add benefit. There's loads out there. So hopefully there's some simple things in there and some more inspirational things to think about.
I think the message here is we all know that AI will revolutionize brand digital experiences. We all know that. I think we just need to be mindful, and that's we are sharing today our model. Just the way we're approaching this is in a way that we are embracing the technology, but not at a cost of impacting the customer experience. So how can we be mindful of that and build something that is meaningful to serve someone at the end of that? So that's the message, basically.
Absolutely. And then just having a look about the future. So right now, what we're talking about is how as brands, how as agencies, can we help brands understand, connect, and serve? What I'm really interested in is where the future of all of this is going. And actually what I think is there's going to be a bit of a shift. So there's going to be a shift away from businesses trying to use AI for commercial advantage, hopefully through serving their customers. Actually, I think the power is going to go back in the hands of the consumer and the individual. And we're seeing this with Web 3.0 and all these sort of principles. But what's quite interesting is if you take our, in my view, take our model and look at that world where an AI is acting on behalf of an individual, you're almost going to be coming up with this, where the AI is there to understand you as an individual. It's actually there to protect you as a human being, to serve you, and make sure you're getting what you need from the world. So just fast forwarding to an example where if you're looking for life insurance, your AI is going to know you. It's going to know what you do. It's going to know probably your whole family history, your medical records, everything. It's going to be able to go away and probably put out there to lots of people who provide life insurance your requirements and say, come back to me with what's right for me. And the most competitive one that meets my needs, this person's going to take up. And actually, it's probably going to be able to transact for you because you'll be to the point you trust it to transact for you, and it can complete that whole thing for you, which suddenly means a future world where we all have much more time back to do the things we love doing. But that's in the future, and that's some way off at the moment. I think 3 useful things we'd like to leave you with today, which we'd encourage you to go away and have a look at. And obviously, Notebook LM, someone on the chat's already been playing with, but for those who haven't, go chuck some information into it and see how good it is at creating this conversation around the information. When we were first playing with it, we couldn't believe how good it was.
Yeah.
It's super impressive. So have a play of that. And for those of you that are a bit more technical, Stack AI is a platform I talk about a lot. It is an enterprise-grade platform, but actually anyone with some base-level technical experience can go into it. You can put data into it. You can engage with the open models that are out there. You can build trigger flows and workflows. And it's a really great tool for that sort of fundamentals of playing around with AI and how you can use it to serve the customer. And then last but not least, Thrive AI, for those of you who haven't heard of it, which is Ariana?
Ariana Huffington.
Ariana Huffington. She's launching this personalized healthcare AI bot, which is talking about this future state is in theory all there to help you. It's still company run rather than individual run. But I think it's a really interesting way to have a look and inspire some future thinking. Right, that is us for the time being. So
can I go back to your answers and maybe have fun and play around and see some examples you shared with us? And now that we went through all our model and how we're structuring the way we approach digital experiences here using AI, if the brands and examples you shared with us are kind of following that, So I think, well, let's mention because I already said about the notebook example. So apparently, so the comment is, it was a good experience. So I tried Google Notebook. It came up with a dialogue between two people. Yes, it was amazing how well it understood what messages we were trying to get across and how credible the conversation was. So what was memorable was how little I had to do and how much I did. It did itself. For sure, believable. And then you mentioned that it would have cost 50K and weeks of planning to have actors produce that, 100%. And I think using our methodology, our approach in understanding. So if the piece of content is it has all the information there in a very understandable way, or like covering all the basics to produce a conversation, then making sure that that content is solving a problem, so connecting with that the consumer need, and then serving, for sure that is serving really well, because the output is a proper conversation between two people. And it's incredible, as Sam said, they have the mannerisms. It is a proper conversation, and so you get very engaged with the conversation. So I believe, from a learning perspective, if you're trying to learn something from that piece of conversation, you probably learn more rather than reading a long written format. So great experience. That's a good example.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got so Tim's thrown a comment out here about booking.com and how booking, Genius Rewards was actually offered at a point in time which felt like poor timing, was a negative experience. And that's a really good example where their machine learning is not working brilliantly. They should be learning from that and improving. I think that's actually really interesting when you look at something like booking.com. Now, when booking.com came on the market, it was a digital experience that disrupted. Suddenly, you could book from a range of places in one single experience. And that hadn't really been done before. And it was good. It was definitely a step up. It definitely disrupted the market. What I think is really interesting, though, is I feel like they're now getting left behind.
So embrace.
Exactly. I mean, so Airbnb, a step up, perhaps. They're using that data at the moment now to start creating places you can stay. I mean, that's kind of like another level. They're recommending that to you in a really highly personalized way. I think, though, even with Airbnb, there's an opportunity now for them to go one step further, or Booking.com and go one step further.
Yeah.
How you engage with those platforms, and we're working with a couple of brands in this space, so I'd be slightly careful about what I say, but how you engage with those platforms is still the same old way it's been for years and years. Now, I'm not saying they should just switch to a chatbot interface, because that wouldn't be right either. But actually, when you think about the power of AI, machine learning, understanding a person and making recommendations and producing content and experiences that reinforce those recommendations, they could be doing way better. They've probably got the challenge that a lot of the companies we work with face, which is they're quite big. So they're now quite slow to go to market. And actually, the rule here is think like a startup. You've got to move ahead with stuff like this.
Is it book.com the same as Blockbuster in the past?
Yeah, exactly.
Not embracing technology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's that for sure.
So that's a really interesting one. What else have we got in here?
We have one more, Monzo.
Yeah, okay. So
really simple and friendly digital experience.
Yeah, and I'm a massive fan of Monzo because I love their purpose and their mission around helping people to get more out of finance. They set about creating a service which is not actually that different to traditional banks, for example.
Yeah.
But actually looked at the customer problem, which is most people don't really get their finances or know how to engage with it. So Monzo launched a brilliant digital experience that disrupted the marketplace. There were some other challenger banks that did it as well, of course. But I think Monzo got the digital experience. They really nailed it. It's really beautiful. It's a great experience. When we look at an experience like that, we say, okay, there's a poor experience, which is where all the banks used to be. There's now a great experience, which is Monzo. But actually, what is an experience that exceeds customer expectation? How can you lift yourself further out of the category to really go further? And I think this is the opportunity with AI.
Yeah.
If you look at Monzo, and we don't work with them at the moment, if you look at Monzo, the amount of information they've got that they could use to help customers even more than they already do, using things like generative AI, using machine learning, I think could be phenomenal and could be an absolute second round of game changer if they can get back in that startup mentality.
And mainly because I'm assuming their audience, they're quite a young audience. who are more maybe, because putting into the context and connecting, if that their audience will resonate with the type of experiences, for sure that's space for them to explore. So because sometimes we feel like just adding the technology to every single industry, regardless of the audience, will work. So we just need to be very, very mindful of that.
Yeah, and there's a whole conversation around, if it is a younger audience, what experiences is that younger audience having online that they're going to relate to? So we could, broad sweeping statement say they're really into TikTok mainly. Well, what's the banking equivalent of TikTok?
Yeah,
that's a shorter paced, more engaging experience. When you get a fraud notification up, how can we gamify it a bit? Rather than just sticking to the traditional experiences we've known in the past. And actually, a fraud notification at the moment, from every platform I experience, is quite basic. It's got some standard questions. Have you been asked to do this? Are you familiar with the buyer? Yes, no. You can actually personalize that. So you've never bought from this person before or service like that, based on what we're seeing. Can you do A, B, and C based on your, so I really think there's an opportunity for all brands to start elevating beyond their category with the potential of AI in the future.
Yeah. And then my experience is different than yours. And that's the whole point.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I think just with the interest of time, should we use the 10 last minutes to just answer some questions?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do that.
Great.
So to Q&A.
Okay, so I think, the question here is, to do everything sounds very complicated. When can I start? Where can I start?
Okay. Yeah, and actually probably that's the biggest challenge a lot of brands are facing at the moment. This feels big and scary. That's that kind of like concerned about it. How are we going to sort all of this out? How are we going to sort all of our data out? How do we put this all into place? We're going to need like multi-million-pound systems. So I think the answer is start with a moment in time. An experience is a series of moments that all add up, and you want to create some moments that are elevated. And they don't all have to be elevated initially. Of course, that's what you want to aim for. So my response to this is, let's look at the current experience, the current journeys, and let's look at where there's an opportunity to add value, to connect and add value to the customer. And you should do that from your customer data, understand, start with, and then improve that moment. And actually, when you look at it like that, that feels manageable. This is the example I give, which is terrible, but that moment might be an email the customer gets, right?
Yeah, just take one
moment, improve one email, personalize it using generative AI, and I think that can make a massive difference. But start by, is that actually a problem? Because if it's not a problem, there's no point investing all your time and effort there. So take a moment in time that's genuinely a problem, driven from understanding, and use it as an opportunity to connect and serve your customer better.
Yeah. Well, we have more questions coming up, so I'm going to try to pick one. I think there's a question about what is an example of a brand experience which is already using AI, but could be doing it better. I don't know if that question came before we mentioned Booking.com, but I think that's the great example.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Just a brand just falling behind, not using the technology out there for them to improve their experience, for sure. And AI could do that for them.
Yeah.
So I think we cover that.
I'd almost be controversial and say almost every great digital experience out there is not doing as much as they could
100%.
be at this point in time. So if we just literally take another example of something like Netflix, they're doing really great work. There's good machine learning there. They're making good recommendations. But how could they go further than that with generative AI? What could they start creating for people? Or how could they make it more engaging, more relevant? They're getting a lot of it right already, but they're going to have to accelerate beyond that in the near future.
Yeah. And again, thinking of ourselves as customers, I feel like the customers nowadays, they are expecting more from the brands, from the experience they in their day-to-day lives. And I don't think brands are just there yet meeting their expectations when it comes to digital experiences. Yeah. So to your point, yes, across the board, I feel like there's so much to improve.
And I don't want to get on my high horse about this, but there's also an opportunity for brands to think about neurodiversity and how can they create experiences which meet the needs of their audiences better. So we're talking a lot here about personalization to serve and have commercial impact, but there should be personalization to help guide people through experiences based on challenges they may face or just different ways they like to communicate. And then the Notebook LM is a good example of that, because for people who prefer audio learning, that's a great tool to help other people be able to engage with content. it's absolutely useless if you've got a visual impairment. So you need to think about how can you help different neurodiversity, different challenges, and create experiences for them with this. The same as sustainability. And I won't start going on about that now, but there's loads of opportunities
We
there.
have a question here about personalization at scale, which I really like that. So could you talk more about AI creating personalization at scale, focusing on story building rather than simple name on items type of personalization? This is a great topic. And I can even talk about this on the client side, just running a personalization at scale project at Unilever at a global level. I think this is what every single big company are trying to do to find cost efficiencies. That's just the challenge they're facing. So it's not really to use the AI to serve, it's more to your point at the beginning, the CMOs are using the tool to drive efficiencies and cost efficiencies internally. So I think to your point, yes, we need to be mindful in terms of creativity, but I think so what is the context here? How can we use the tool to really help us to drive value? So if you're trying to run media at scale for a big client, maybe have a platform to drive to create 50, 100 types of ads to test and see what converts better, what connects better with your customers. That is a good way of using that. Making sure, of course, that the campaign, the idea, the creative has human inputs, but then you just drive that at scale using AI for you to learn more from your customer. I think that's a different way of putting, instead of just using and killing creativity, because then you're no longer connecting with the customers. So I think that's a different way.
A great example, and I think another quick example would be an onboarding workflow for a SaaS platform. So what happens at the moment is someone signs up for a SaaS platform. There might be an onboarding flow, but it'll be the same for everyone. Now, if you think about the fact you could tailor that onboarding flow based on what the prospect wanted and what they're most interested in. Some of that's data on their behavior today. Some of that might be data the salesperson puts in. And then it creates an onboarding flow, which helps the person understand the bits of the experience which are most relevant to them, and they'll get more value from the platform as a result. It frustrates the hell out of me that every onboarding flow is the same, and half of it's not relevant to me. So, there's another example, just really simple. It could just be a great way and that's storytelling as well. That's storytelling to the user based on what they're interested in and what the platform does and how it can help them. So from creative marketing campaign through to customer engagement, I think that personalization is so many possibilities.
And I think this answered the other question in terms of, is there any advice or guidance on how to get digitally resistant or perhaps older customers to become comfortable with using AI-powered tools? I think we are kind of sharing some of the points. Is how you phrase it, I guess, because you can use AI to drive personalization at scale, but what are you doing with that? Are you learning from that data? Are you learning from those insights to drive growth, to drive results for your customers, right? So I think it is how we are phrasing and using the technology to drive insights, not only to just using it for the sake of using it. That could be helpful.
And also, let's remember that a lot of brands will still have a real life physical experience with humans involved. And this is where you need to look at the intersection of the two. How can your real life experience enable people to be more comfortable with the digital experience and vice versa? Sometimes digital should lead to real retail in life. Other times it should be the other way around. Sometimes it can just be one or the other. But with perhaps someone who's less comfortable with digital, perhaps there's a touch point between two people, someone who works for your company and the customer, where that person can enable them to use technology and can show them the power of it. And AI can help that person do it in a tailored way. So that's using AI in a slightly different way, but to serve a customer and to reassure someone who's perhaps not comfortable with technology. But the fraud example is another good example of that. I think you're helping people feel more comfortable with technology. AI is helping do it in a more personal way, so they're going to feel more comfortable with it. But going back to that point, people want brands to be transparent. So don't pretend it's a chatbot that's a human. Be super clear, and you should do, legally, you should be saying, this is a chatbot, it may not be accurate at this point in time, this is what it's been trained on. So I think there's lots in there. I'm conscious of time.
Conscious of time, but that was one question about transparency of AI. Maybe that could be our last one because you touched on it. So consumers desire greater transparency of AI, but what does that mean in practical terms? And does that present a challenge to seamless experience design, in your opinion? So I think you partially answered that.
Yeah.
So you just need to be clear and very transparent about this. So even if you have a chatbot, just be clear, this is a robot trying to serve you the best way possible. So and we're looking after your data the best way possible. So in terms of using UX design and creativity to be transparent is part of the challenge, for sure.
Yeah, and I think in our experience, consumers appreciate it when brands are honest about the fact they're trying to help.
Yeah.
And they're using technology to do this, and they're trying to do it in a responsible way, and they'd love feedback. People really engage with that in our experience. So perhaps there's food for thought.
Yeah, there's an email that I received normally saying, you can ask an AI to help you answer this question. This is not me, but this is something that can help you to get to the answer. So just be honest and transparent. Yeah.
Great. We'll finish up there because it's 11 o'clock, even though we've got loads more questions. So I hope everyone took something out of today. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the engagement. It made our lives much easier. We really appreciate it. And please do connect with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to grab a coffee one day and chat further if you have questions.
Yeah. You can see we're pretty passionate about the subject. So yes, connect. It will be great to catch up with some of you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gabby, Sam. Really interesting. And thank you everybody for joining. If you don't have back-to-backs, go and play with Spotify DJ and Notebook. Bye everyone.
Thanks, Matt. Bye. See you later.
Cheers. Bye.